Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for the month of July and we're outlining the overall themes for the month along with some key dates where important events are taking place. I'll give an overview of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It gives us a framework to help us understand what is unfolding around us, perhaps to recognise where the key opportunities for growth and where the lessons are for learning at this time. But from there it's up to us to actually take advantage of the option or the opportunities presented to us. And it also requires that we take action, but we also take responsibility for our actions and making sure that they're guided by wisdom and not just egoic impulses. Now, in terms of the astrology for July, for the first 3 weeks or so of July, we'll have the Sun in Cancer. So the kind of theme up from the beginning of July till the 23rd, when the Sun enters his home sign of Leo, is illuminating the subconscious mind and the impact of emotional conditioning from our past on how we see events around us and how we interact with people. Now, Cancer is all about nurturing, it's about connecting with the emotions, and it's about the roots of our being. And this often gets associated with kind of home and family life, if you like. But at a deeper level, it's more about being in touch with the roots of our being, of connecting with the core of who we are, and to be rooted and stable in life. And it's also, at a higher level, about developing the capacity for emotional equilibrium, of having that emotional stability and that capacity to live in a state of serenity through overcoming the tendency to become attached to the emotions or be drawn into the kind of emotional drama that can take place when we're still living from conditioning. So the challenge during this time is about recognizing when our emotional responses to things is based on conditioning, taking that step back, often through breathing, so using the breath to create that space between the thought and the emotion, and then allowing the emotion to flow on by rather than getting caught up in it. So you can imagine it, the Cancer is a bit like a river. It's got all that emotional energy in it, but a river is still contained. It's got the banks either side of it that contain the river in a well-defined channel, and as long as the amount of emotion flowing through doesn't exceed that containment, then the river doesn't flood, it doesn't drown everything and destroy the environment around it. So it's about learning to allow the emotions to flow. So we don't want to suppress them, that's not healthy at all, and it will eventually lead to emotional outbursts down the line that we can't control. It's learning to be detached with the emotions, to witness them or observe them, like standing on the riverbank and watching the emotions flow by. Old emotional issues or old emotional hang-ups are a bit like debris in the river. But if we observe it long enough and don't jump in and make and cause the water to become turbulent or troubled, then whatever old emotional dross is still residing within us can flow on by and be released altogether, to the point where the emotions are flowing smoothly. There's no longer anything polluting the emotional body, if you like. And from there we're able to have that kind of emotional stability, be secure within ourselves. So rather than relying on other people to give us emotional security, it's taking responsibility for ourselves to create that within us, to have that space within us where we become more grounded and connect with the core of who we are. The emotions are able to flow, but we're not drowning in them. We're on the banks observing the emotions, and from here it allows us to become more present in our lives. So not just mentally present, but also emotionally present. This then allows us to meet people as they are and to offer that kind of nurturing energy that Cancer specialises in, but in a way that will actually help the other person. But it's important that we don't try and jump in and rescue other people, that we don't try to deal with other people's issues for them. The only issues we should be dealing with are our own emotional issues. It's the other person's responsibility for dealing with theirs. The only time we're responsible for another person is if we have children under the age of 18 or anything like that. Otherwise, the only people we are responsible for is ourselves. So if someone is having emotional meltdown or anything like that, ultimately they're responsible for sorting it out. This doesn't mean that if we say something hurtful that we're not responsible for that. So if our own actions have triggered this response, and obviously we need to take responsibility in that respect. If, however, it's just the person operating from conditioning, it's not our place to try and nurture them or protect them from their own feelings. Ultimately, it's the responsibility for all of us to take ownership of our own emotional responses, to rise above the emotions so we're not swimming in them all the time and never seeing things from a higher perspective. It's stepping back from them and putting everything into perspective and recognising that we don't need to take anything personally. How people act is based on their own conditioning and often based on their own unconscious programming. If we take it personally, we create drama for ourselves and create emotional suffering, and it's not worth it. But the side effect of doing all of this shedding of emotional programming allows us to get in touch with our roots, where kind of the subconscious underpinnings like dreams and creativity or creative energy can flow up, and also getting in touch with the intuition. And by clearing out these emotional hang-ups, we release a lot of energy from the psyche that can then be channeled into creative pursuits. And this is the kind of theme of the Sun in his home sign of Leo from the 23rd of July brings. Now, the main thing to remember here is that the goal of Leo is to be able to just to be ourselves, to not worry about what we're doing, what we should be doing or anything like that. It's just be. And it's also about being able to radiate our own life, or radiate our own light, sorry. It's about being in touch with that creative energy that flows through us. But it's also recognising that this creative energy is not our own, it's not something that we claim ownership over. If we try doing that, then this is the ego getting involved, and it often has unintended consequences. It's recognising that we're a channel for this creative energy, and that if we work with it, if we co-create it, then life can become very magical. It's about that joy of simply being, of not having to play a certain role. It's just stepping back, being within ourselves and living from our hearts, and having that just simple joy of being, where there's no need to be a certain way. It's having that love naturally flowing from us, and where we can just shine our own light and not feel intimidated when we see someone else shining their light. It's reaching that point where we have that beneficent spirit, that joy, that mercy, that desire to radiate love and that magnanimous spirit upon other people. And it's recognising that the more people are shining their light, the more light there is in the world, and the more humanity can move towards its highest level of operation. But it requires that we have the capacity to be ourselves, to rise above conditioning, and to let go of any fears or insecurities that keep us playing the ego's games instead. So it's moving beyond the need to wear different masks. It's about embracing that creativity for the sake of it, embracing playfulness in life, because play is something that's become almost a taboo in society these days. But the fact of the matter is, when we can embrace play, the number of creative solutions we can come up with, and the more the right solutions to existing problems certainly present themselves to us, when we're no longer pressurising ourselves to be a certain way, to pursue a conventional way of doing things, when we free that creative energy to do its own thing, or we allow ourselves to embrace all kinds of creative ideas without worrying about how to implement them or anything like that, this is when solutions to ongoing problems can suddenly present themselves. It requires that we'll be in touch with that creative energy, but be secure within ourselves to be able to shine our own light and not become jealous or insecure when we see other people shine their own light, and recognising that we don't need other people's approval or affirmation or to shine our own light. If we're being who we are, the light shines naturally, and we feel, rather than being self-centered, we become centered in self, of that capacity to just be present, to be that loving and generous presence in people's lives, but and not take ourselves too seriously anymore. Now, in terms of the aspects or the key dates this month, it begins on the key events start on the 2nd of July. So this is when we have the solar eclipse in Cancer, and this opens the eclipse window. So this is a 2-week period where things often become very chaotic if we're living a life that isn't aligned with who we really are. So in some respects, it serves as a cosmic kick up the backside to get our act together and to do what is right for who we are. So the most important thing is to go with the flow, and it's to recognise where things that have been played a part in our lives for a long time have reached their expiry, that holding on to them will just clog our energy up and prevent us from achieving our full potential. So this is a time of letting go of the old, of creating that space for the new path to unfold, if you like. It's also a time of embracing new lessons. So with the solar eclipse in Cancer, this is all about being connected with our feelings. It's about nurturing, and the kind of lessons it reminds us that we need to let go of any tendency to indulge in any self-pity. Self-pity doesn't get us anywhere. It just keeps us adding more energy to the problem rather than dealing with this, trying to come up with a solution. It's also about, as I said earlier, keeping perspective with emotions. When other people are doing things which seem hurtful, we need to remind ourselves that it's not always something they're doing to us. More often than not, they're operating from their own conditioning. They don't realise what they're doing, and to take it personally, it's just causing ourselves suffering. So it's learning to not take anything personally. It's being present with the emotions but not drowning in them. And it's the capacity to almost transform that kind of the old energies through that compassionate presence, that nurturing presence. But it's only seeking to actively nurture another person when they ask for it or they require assistance. And it's important that we allow the person to ask for it rather than trying to jump in and save the day for them, sort of thing. If we jump in and try and meddle just to try and prevent the other person from experiencing pain, more often than not, we end up just getting resentment from the other person, because what we're really doing by doing that is preventing them from growing to experiencing key lessons that would allow them to become more self-aware and more mature. So it's very important that we don't try and play the saviour role in other people's lives, that we allow them to make mistakes, even if we can see that they're heading towards a train wreck. But that may just be the one thing they need in order to wake up and transform their lives. So the most important thing for ourselves is to focus that nurturing energy on ourselves to become comfortable. I mean, one way to gauge whether we're good or whether we're reaching that level is how comfortable are we just being on our own, to be in a place of silence. We're not distracted by any electronics or any other activities. We're just being present. And if we get comfortable with that, then it becomes a lot easier to nurture ourselves. It's letting go of any limiting perceptions of ourselves, letting go of old emotional programming based around an idea that we're not good enough or that we're not strong enough to do something. It's letting go of that dependent aspect of the self and instead embracing a more empowered sense of self, that emotional equanimity, so we're no longer pulled into other people's drama. We're able to give nurturing unconditionally, to not take other people's dramas personally, and to be in a state of peace. This window then closes at the lunar eclipse in Capricorn on the 16th. So with the lunar eclipse in Capricorn, this is about learning the importance of taking full responsibility for our actions and our choices, and it's recognising that if we want to be in an empowered position in life, if we want to be in a position of authority, then we have to take full responsibility for our actions. We have to live by a strong code of ethics. We have to recognise that if we want to have a positive standing in the community or anything like that, or we want to pursue a goal that will allow us to stand in a position of authority in our own lives, then we have to overcome any tendencies to rely on other people or to depend on others. We have to let go of any tendencies to try and take shortcuts out of a fear of control, and it's learning to let go of trying to control other people or being insecure over other people's success, and instead learning to recognise that if we want to be part of a community, we have to not only empower ourselves, we have to have that willingness to uplift other people, to give a positive encouragement, and to have that almost fatherly approach to people who are seeking to try and get ahead in life and empower themselves. It's rather than trying to hold things back or try and hold on to things to maintain control, it's letting go of that need to control and instead recognising that by empowering other people or giving the encouragement to other people to empower themselves and to strengthen their skill sets and strengthen their sense of empowerment in their own lives, everyone benefits. Because if we're all empowering ourselves and seeking that mutual empowerment through giving the right encouragement and guidance and the key information that someone needs in order to help them move to the next level of development, also obviously making sure that we're only devoting our energy to the people who are doing things honestly and making sure that what we do is honest as well. And by stepping up to the plate and standing in our own power and standing for a core set of values and living them out in every aspect of our lives, we achieve a level of integrity that allows us to empower ourselves and raise our consciousness higher. Without integrity, there's an inherent limit as to how much potential we can tap into. So the more we can live with integrity, so have our thoughts, our words, our actions in alignment with one another and aligned with the truth, then we empower ourselves to not only become stronger in our own personal lives, but also to be better able to aid the communities that we're part of and to be a positive example for other people. Another focus for this month is going to be down to Mercury retrograde. Now, Mercury is already in the shadow at the start of July, but from the 7th of July till the 31st of July, Mercury is going to be retrograde, starting off in Leo and backtracking in Cancer. And this is a time where it's important that wherever possible we slow down and learn to just be. So Mercury retrograde is a bit like the rational mind or the logical mind that we rely on for everyday things. It's powering down a bit to allow a more balanced psyche to emerge through allowing the intuitive side to bring to our attention the information that we've overlooked. So it's a time to go with the flow. It's a time to focus on awareness rather than obsessing over details. And it's a time to try and avoid doing anything that requires any kind of signing contracts, as it were, because the details may change, sort of thing. This is a time where it's about gathering the information to understand the broader implications of things and recognising where we might need to make changes to how we do things in order to be more aligned with the natural flow and to make sure that we're doing things in a more holistic way. And it's also about bringing the rational and intuitive sides together. And with it being in Leo to begin with, it's about understanding our relationship with play and creativity. With it moving on to Cancer, it's developing a mental understanding of how old conditioning from the past has an influence on our personality, so what we've inherited from parents, from family, from key figures when we were young. This is a time for facing these kinds of issues, of recognising them and letting them go, so that we let go of the conditioned sense of self and embrace the empowered self. On the 8th of July, Chiron is turning retrograde in Aries and will be retrograde until the 12th of December. But I will obviously go into separate videos for topics like the eclipses, Mercury and Chiron, because they need their own at the end of the day. This is, after all, a monthly video. But with Chiron turning retrograde, this is an opportunity for us to become more conscious of the wounds to the sense of the I am. So it's becoming more conscious of where we have a habitual tendency to use disempowering language after the words I am, because this then conditions our sense of who we are and affects our capacity to take action. So it's important during this time that we become more aware of our tendency to use negative words after the phrase I am, because whatever we say after I am is an identity statement, and if we're using negative terms, we're disempowering ourselves, we're keeping ourselves playing small, and the wound to the ego will be in control of everything. So we'll always be doing things to either have a fear of initiating anything, or conversely feel like we have to do something to prove ourselves when actually it's not necessary. But as I said, I'll go into more detail in a separate video on that. The last date this month will be the 17th. This is when Ceres turns direct. So Ceres has been retrograding Sagittarius for the past 2 to 3 months or so, and the kind of focus has been about whether the belief systems that we have nurture us and allow us to progress forward in life, allow us to expand our consciousness, and trust that the flow of consciousness will guide us forward. The natural flow of the energies will guide us in the right direction. But it's about making sure that the beliefs we hold nurture ourselves. And with Ceres turning direct, it's about making sure that whatever we've learned is applied in our lives, so we don't just waste the opportunity to focus on this area. It's about applying what we've learned and making sure that the beliefs that we hold foster a positive outlook in life and the capacity to take any obstacles with a graceful approach, or take any challenges with an air of grace, and to trust that everything happens for a reason. Everything happening in our lives will ultimately guide us towards higher potentials if we learn to let go of taking things personally and trust that there's a higher outcome trying to be presented to us. We just have to be willing to let go of how we think things should be and trust what's trying to work its way into our consciousness, that will be based on truth rather than what the ego thinks is right. So there's quite a lot going on in July, but the overall themes are becoming more aware of old emotional conditioning and illuminating it through presence, and separating from our emotional responses, so we observe our internal responses to the environment rather than blaming our internal responses on what's happening outside. If we understand where our cues are, we can let go of them or disempower them. And if we recognise where we're living in the past still, and recognise that the only place where true growth can take place is in the present moment, we can detach from our past, we can let it go, and we can let go of the old self that is based on old conditioning, and allow the true self to take over, to be the guiding light in our life and connect us with our true potential and our true capacity for unconditional love and generosity of spirit, and the capacity to just shine our light and just be present in our lives rather than thinking that we have to fulfill certain roles, which requires us living with a mask on. It's about having the courage to let go of the masks, to just embrace playfulness in life, to embrace the joy of living, and enjoy creating new projects without worrying about whether it's right or not. We can always worry about refining what we're doing later on, but if we don't try it, if we don't even bother expressing that creative energy and channeling it into projects, then we'll never really know what we're capable of creating. So it's about letting go of any hang-ups as to whether what we're doing is good enough, and instead just getting creative, and if any refinements need to be made, that can be done along the way. But as long as we don't take ourselves too seriously, we don't worry about perfection, and we're just focusing on getting in touch with that creative energy to begin with, we can then focus on creating what we want in our own lives and creating the life that we wish to lead, rather than living a life based on conditioning. So may the astrology for July bring many opportunities for growth and an opportunity to let go of old chapters that keep you playing small and allow new chapters to open that allow more expanded or empowered sense of self to emerge through being present and having that capacity to enjoy the simple pleasure of being rather than always having to be doing things. So take care, and may this month be many blessings and a new lease of life for you, if that is what is required at this time in order to help you see who you really are, not who you've been conditioned to believe you are. So take care and be blessed.